Hello team, welcome to another ATPGEO Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a US-UK political news update concerning, first of all, Donald Trump coming on a state visit to the UK, and then we're going to talk about Elon Musk's interference in politics in the UK, demanding some kind of political coup or revolution to overthrow the present government. But at the moment, the present government and the king. They are both receiving Donald Trump on a state visit, and quite a bit to say about this. So Trump's childish fantasy comes true. I am king. Brits are playing Trump like a fiddle, says this source, and they are putting out all the stops. Now, this carriage ride ended up being on private ground because they were worried about protests, and I think justifiably so. There, I think about 5,000 people protesting outside Westminster, Donald Trump calling him fascist and whatnot. So they are laying all the red carpet and putting all the bells and whistles on for Trump. He's going to love this because he will feel like a king. He will feel all the pomp and circumstances. He loves all that kind of stuff. His mother was Scottish, so he has a connection to the UK. The reason why this is happening, remember, is because the UK, when Keir Starmer visited, the White House wanted Trump on side for Ukraine. Actually, this is all part of Ukraine. Many people have forgotten this, and there are people asking, why are we having this state visit for Trump? Because not many people in the UK like him. He's very much an unpopular figure here. And it was just forgotten that this was Starmer's way in. So here's a letter from the king offering you over as a kind of way of saying, right, now let's talk about Ukraine. And in fact, there is quite a lot. I haven't got this lined up for you because I had it actually lined up to talk about in my geopolitical update. But there are ideas that this visit is going to be a way of trying to get Trump on side for Ukraine still, and using the king to do that. So just this is what I had sort of lined up. Otherwise, here we have King Charles could influence Trump's stance on the Ukraine, according to Politico. British authorities are hoping that the king's charm will help persuade the American leader to increase his support for Ukraine. And this is why they're going to town. So a luxurious reception was prepared, especially for Trump in UK, with a banquet, air parade and guards of honor. According to Politico, this reception is planned to be used to influence Trump's position on Ukraine. So that is certainly something that's going on here. But the whole thing was a way of getting Trump on Starmer's side, so it wasn't sort of ambushed. He was all like, oh, I got a letter from the king. Can you read it to me? Yep, you've been offered for a state visit. Okay, that's brilliant. Right, let's go and talk in private about Ukraine. Okay, but Donald Trump's done what he did with the Queen. So Queen Elizabeth II, when she was alive, he walked in front of her. That's a big faux pas. He's done this with King Charles as well. Donald Trump is supposed to walk behind King Charles, but instead King Charles trails along like the pointless little accessory. Here's to Donald Trump's fascism, says this source. But yeah, Trump just doesn't read the room or doesn't care. Maybe he knew that he did wrong last time and did this again. I mean, I'm not a big fan of deference and this kind of these protocols, but nonetheless, there is something a bit odd about Charles being behind these two and Trump just taking the lead and walking on next to this military gentleman. So anyway, Trump in the UK walks out of King Charles, breaking tradition, because of course he does. So quite a few places reporting on that. Now, it's worth noting that there are thousands of anti-Trump protesters marching in London as the king and senior royals host US president in Windsor. Thousands of anti-Trump protesters denouncing him as fascist. Trump and Charles, two sides of the same coin, says an anti-monarchy group. But anyway, that is happening. Question is, what's going on behind the scenes? Well, before we get there, let's just give you a bit of an understanding of how some people in the UK feel about Trump. In fact, enough people that Channel 4 News is marking Trump's UK visit with the longest uninterrupted reel of untruths. So the broadcaster, and I do like Channel 4 News, it's probably our best news, I think, is to dedicate Wednesday night's schedule to unpicking US president's false or misleading statements. Wow. So John O'Connell says, this will be good. Pay attention, America. British media will tell you the truth about your paedophile rapist president. A British TV station to air a marathon of Trump's lies as he visits the UK. So the president's 2019 state visit to London was met with widespread protests. He's headed back this week. So that was, I think, it was at Rolling Stone there. American media doesn't have the balls to do this, says someone. And then this is Channel 4 actually doing a Mickey take of Trump's own tweets or Truth Social posts. In all caps, Channel 4 says, tonight on the failing Channel 4, quote, even worse than ITV, they are showing more than 100 untruths told by your favourite president, Donald J. Trump. This is fake news by the mainstream media, MSM, and an attack on your favourite president, brackets Donald J. Trump. Do not watch at 10 p.m. And they spell favourite with no U. So this is like, is properly going like American, take the Mickey, self-deprecating in a way. Channel 4, even worse than ITV, which is one of our other main channels. Just absolutely brilliant. So Channel 4, like one of our main terrestrial TV stations, is trolling Donald Trump and then is going to show just a whole section of lies that Donald Trump said at 10 o'clock. Then we have this. Activists rolled out a giant Trump Epstein photo on Windsor Castle's lawn where King Charles will host him and Melania. Bet Trump loved the welcome. I don't know if you got to see it, to be honest. There are claims that some of these are being shut down. There's a van with a big billboard on driving past as well with similar stuff. You've got bus stops with the apparently with the words Donald Trump is a racist. Is a rapist. Either. So yeah, this is all going on. We've got Led by Donkeys doing this, which is great. Although I do believe now the projector has been seized, so I don't know that Trump will get to see this.
Cheers. On that tower, we see that tower behind me there, Tom, currently white. Just a few moments ago, protesters, anti-Trump protesters from the hotel opposite, we think, managed to project some images on there. And what were they of? As you can probably see from some of these pictures, Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, that could not be a little more tricky and difficult just moments after Donald Trump arrived here. So yeah, you couldn't really call it a security breach necessarily, but in terms of the diplomacy and laying on the charm, I'd say that was a bit of a massive failure. Let's just talk about tomorrow then, when they hope to put that kind of thing behind them.
So that was happening. Now we hear that the Led by Donkeys legends who have been arrested under malicious communications law for using a projector. That Led by Donkeys are brilliant. They do so many great things. Elon Musk willingly incites violence and death in the UK. Radio silence from our police, but the projector, we live in extremely dangerous times. Now, what's really going on here? So Trump is over here to hopefully be convinced about Ukraine. But what's he going to achieve? Well, actually, this is about US tech giants setting up shop in the UK. And so people have been talking about how realistically this is all about the US wanting to lobby on behalf of the US tech industry. So the Trump administration lobbying on behalf of the tech industry to have us have much less harsh digital sales taxes or digital regulation for the tech industry. And we are here. So here, Faisal Islam, who's a BBC correspondent for the new BBC News, says the world's most important business leader, Jensen Huang of US chip and AI infrastructure giant NVIDIA, tells me for BBC News, quote, this is a week that I declare the UK will be an AI superpower and much more on AI jobs. The UK company he is backing, China and quantum. So one quick clip from NVIDIA boss Jensen Huang, who says UK is sitting on a goldmine as regards AI and advanced science, and told me he is declaring the UK an AI superpower, crediting the Prime Minister only behind the US and China, that Britain can be too humble about its amazing talent, labs and unis. this is all potentially very true. And actually, so Keir Starmer is in a position where his polls are tanking. The government is desperately unpopular, partly because of skewed perceptions against reality. There is the issue with immigration. We'll talk about. I'll just remind you a little bit about that in a second. But they've inherited a whole load of troubling scenarios with regard to the economy and immigration that has been the result of 14 years of Conservative rule, and we've got less than a year of the Labour rule, and people blame them for all sorts because that's very easy to do. But trying to turn around things like immigration and the economy is like turning a tanker, right? So these are difficult things, but I was listening to an analysis the other day on radio saying we are impatient, like British electorate, but actually electorates around the world. You're seeing single term rules for parties because they just want change. They want success straight away. And we're used to living in a Wi-Fi world where we don't have like dial-up internet anymore, right? And if our internet's not super quick, we get really, really annoyed. If I can't order my groceries and have them here the next day by delivery, if Amazon Prime is not delivering me something tomorrow, then I'm really pissed off. And that's our approach to politics. And if we don't see success within freaking 6 months, then we're out on the streets then. And I think AI can actually foment that discord not AI, well, yes, AI, but algorithms and social media sites can foment that discord. And that's what we're seeing actually around the world. And I think arguably part of why these tech companies might be setting up. So we're hearing today a massive investment in the UK in the tech industry. So we have as well as the I don't know if we've got it here. Yeah, UK is going to be an AI superpower, says Nvidia boss as he invests £500 million. Okay, I'm going to go back to where we were. So this is potentially a really big success for Keir Starmer. If he can sell this state visit and say, okay, you don't really like Trump, but look at what we've got massive investment at the time. We desperately need inward investment from outside. This obviously pro-Brexit person says Nvidia and Microsoft are investing $40 billion into the UK. Partly this is because of our geographical position to other population centres, but let's be honest, the EU is hostile to big tech and we're easier to deal. RIP, give us one tangible benefit, bros, from 2016. So this person is saying those people that say there are no benefits to leaving the EU, this is a benefit. But the comeback to this would be, what are we giving up so that we get that investment? It's good to get this investment. Of course, it's brilliant for the UK economy. But if it comes at the cost of not having any regulation on big tech, there is a worry here. So the idea that the EU is hostile to big tech, no, they want responsible regulation so big tech doesn't rule the roost like it does in the US and like they want in Europe from the US. And so this could be driving a division between the UK and the EU, where we have soft regulation rules for tech because we're so desperate for that investment. I would like to see whether our Online Safety Act has been messed around with to the benefit of the big tech companies, so on and so forth. And we're going to return to this idea because actually it's wrapped up with what's going on with the Elon Musk as well. So NVIDIA Newsroom says, accelerating the UK's AI goals. We are building with Microsoft, Nscale Cloud, CoreWeave, OpenAI and NVIDIA are building the nation's AI infrastructure by adding 120,000 GPUs to national data centers, making it the largest AI infrastructure rollout in the country's history. So the United Kingdom is building the infrastructure for the AI industrial revolution, said Jensen Huang. Okay, so this is a really big sell for that might be wrapped up in this visit. That there's no coincidence that this is all being announced today or in the last 24 hours. Okay, so that's all happening. I'm going to rewind us a little bit to the United Kingdom protest march that took place the other day, right? That was Now, some of you viewers have been in favour of this march and said it's not a far-right march. You know, it's not just about racists and thugs. Actually, there are a lot of people on this who were just genuinely concerned about, you know, UK pride and so on and so forth. And I would say, yeah, maybe, but it definitely was a far-right march for a bunch of reasons that I'm going to tell you. And it's one of these, all A's are B, but not all B's are necessarily A. In other words, all pigs are animals, but not all animals are pigs. All racists went on a march, but not all marchers are racists, type thing. So this was definitely a far-right led march where you had all of the kind of far-right big wigs and organizations and genuinely like fascist movements involved, but you also had other people who were along for other reasons. But the problem is, like, it genuinely was a far-right organized march, and we're going to talk about that now. So immigration, what do we have here? Yeah, right. Immigration is halved under from 2 years ago under the Tories. Crime is down 2 years ago under the Tories. So one wonders why these drunk racist thugs were protesting 2 years ago. Why weren't they protesting 2 years ago under the Tories? Because they believe lies from following billionaire owners. And this is where you start getting a sense that the narrative is being driven, and we'll come back to this by Elon Musk. And on this march, you had all sorts of odd things going on. And it's interesting to hear Alistair Campbell talk about this with, in fact, I should get that for you, because there's a really good little bit of analysis on this from Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart. So this is, you know, a section of the protest march. And essentially, this is basically people feeling that they can go back to, you know, football chants that you would hear at football grounds, and when lads are drunk out on a Saturday night out on a mass scale that really kind of reflects, I think, a regression. But yet this is the pride of the UK march. So what are they singing here? So this idea, we're protecting the girls, we're protecting the women, and it's like, get your tits out for the lads, get your tits out for that. Anyway, that football chant, it seems weird for me to try and explain that to you. But anyway, you know, so there was definitely dodgy elements of this, but on this march, But then when you see the actual organisers, so people like Tommy Robinson, who is a far-right agitator, who's been in prison and yada, 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 and he was organising it. And then there are interesting elements of where he got his funding from. Then we go to, like, who was speaking at the rally. So they act shocked when people call Tommy Robinson's mob far right. Here's a speaker at his free speech rally, and this is what he says. It's actually a Kiwi.
Hinduism, Baha'i, Buddhism, and whatever else you're into are all false religions. We've got to clean our countries up. We've got to get everything out that does not know or receive Jesus Christ. Ban any type of public expression in our Christian nations from other religions. Ban halal, ban burqas, ban mosques, ban temples, ban shrines. We don't want those in our countries, because our countries have been built on a religion that founded our great nations. Islam, Hinduism.
Okay, so you've got a real Christocentric approach there, but it's banning. This is like, that's pretty fascistic, right? So it's banning all of these things, temples, whatever religion, Baha'i, Hinduism, Islam, ban. You have other people like this. I mean, why you would want to import Valentina Gomez over to speak at the rally as well. But, you know, in case anyone is still arguing it wasn't a far-right organised march, doesn't mean that there weren't other people who weren't interested in this stuff, but the organisers were definitely interested in this stuff.
Keir Starmer, you're the biggest pedophile protector in history. And God is watching, and you will pay for what you've done to England. And to the police officers, thank you for being here today.
But I need you to stop following orders because you know you're being told to look the other way while your country is being raped into submission. It's either now or never, because if these rapist Muslims take over, they will not only rape your women, they will behead your sons, just like they did on October 7th in Israel. So we either fight now or we die. We're fighters. We are warriors of Jesus Christ. And we need a new prime minister that has guts and that's going to stand up for the British and send all of these rapist Muslims and dirty rugs back to their Sharia nations.
Nice to see those kids there listening to that. Valentina Gomez, powered by Jesus Christ. So definitely a Christocentric approach. But she mentioned Israel. And this is really, really important. And I hadn't realized this because, you know, I showed you this video the other day where you had a number of Israeli flags at the march. I also, there was another video, I'm not going to show it to you, but it's this young YouTuber showing this guy who's carrying an Israeli flag, how hypocritical he was because he was dead against everything else. Anyway, I won't show it because it's pretty offensive and used lots of the C word in it as a guy was basically shown up by some young YouTuber type. But you've got a whole bunch of Israeli flags going on here. And I didn't realize the connection here. And I think this is actually really, really important when you understand the idea of interference in our politics in the UK. Who is paying for Tommy Robinson to have that rally, to put up that stage, to pay for Valentina Gomez to come across to the UK and make those kind of statements, and for all these other who is paying for that, I wonder. So let's go to Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart on the Rest is Politics talking about this march, and we'll see some connections to who might have been behind it.
In Britain over the last week has been this big demonstration in Trafalgar Square where Tommy Robinson managed to get 130,000 people, and there's some very dramatic images of people all over Nelson's Column and the Lions and crowds up and down Whitehall. I think firstly, it's a lot of people, and it's a lot of people behind somebody who is considered so right-wing that Nigel Farage is distancing himself from it. He stood up there with Eric Zemmour, who we've talked about, who's this far-right French politician who really is well beyond the French. Again, he's sort of beyond Le Pen. So
Eric Zemmour is further right of Marine Le Pen and her Rassemblement National.
And he was talking about the great replacement by Muslims, that we're being colonized by our former colonies. And then in the center of it all is Elon Musk is projecting on an enormous screen in Trafalgar Square. He's clearly increasingly close politically to Tommy Robinson, and he produced this extraordinary statement to this crowd of right-wing, predominantly male, predominantly white British working class people. Whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you, fight back or die. What was your sense of all this?
Well, I found that part of it absolutely repellent. And of course, Musk is a classic example of one of these super wealthy people who now has the platform, X, and has the politics to be very well placed to help somebody like Tommy Robinson exploit what Tommy Robinson is trying to achieve. And I think they've actually got different objectives. I think Musk's objective is to have chaos wherever it can be, to weaken democratic government so that he can absolutely be above any kind of democratic or political control. And that's part of what he's about. The event itself there's clearly a lot of money behind Robinson. And I shared with you a piece that I think was from The Observer about this very, very wealthy American guy, Shillman, who has partly been a funder of Robinson.
So that's really, really important.
Tied in, real name Stephen Yaxley Lennon.
So this Shillman chap, that's what we're going to focus on in this next part.
A many times convicted far-right thug.
This is Robinson.
You're making a statement. I think, just by being there. So I don't think we should we should forget that. However, that there are issues that are driving people to feel exasperated about the state of the country, that is also true.
In terms of journalists and how we understand these issues, so Peter Carl had this phrase, this is a klaxon call to wake up and focus on what that crowd was saying. Trevor Phillips in the Times said this was a crowd, and he walked around interviewing them, which was about three things: stopping immigration, defending free speech, and reviving Christianity. And I just felt reading this, come on, Trevor, let's go a level deeper and ask, what do you mean? What do you mean by reviving Christianity? Yeah. It's not 100,000 theologians on the street, is it?
I'd love to know how many of them went to church on the Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think with that many.
So what is happening when journalists are doing this? Is Trevor prepared to go the next line and say, okay, you've said this is a crowd that's demonstrating to revive Christianity. What do we really mean here? And I guess what we mean is we don't like Muslims. It's not that these are religious believers.
Correct. And I think going back to this guy, this billionaire American Robert Shulman, who funds a lot of this stuff and funds it around the world. He funded Charlie Kirk. He funded at one point Katie Hopkins, who also spoke. He funds Laura Loomer.
Candace Owens, until she came out and said Israel was committing a genocide.
Correct.
Because there's a very, very strong connection. And this is a great article, actually, I thought, from The Observer by John Simpson. Great piece of reporting. But what he points out is that there is this connection between Robert Shulman, something called the David Horowitz Freedom Center.
Pro-Israel think tank type thing.
Exactly. And
Horowitz is now dead, I think.
And their story is that what they're fighting against, and this becomes more and more relevant when we talk about Charlie Kirk and the fight back around Charlie Kirk, they are fighting radical left and Islamists. And of course, that has a big application, Israel-Gaza, where the radical left and the Islamists are considered to be the people who are making anti-Semitic criticisms of Israel. But it also really spills into this story about the UK, spelt YOOKAY, which is now a big meme, which is in the vision of people on the West Coast, taken over by Islamists, where you're sent to jail if you criticize Sharia law. I had a friend over from Singapore yesterday who was saying to me, well, my friend said, do be careful when you're in London, because all this social media stuff is giving this impression. It's kind of literally you can't step out of your door without being rugged. And so all of this stuff is driven, a lot of it, as you say, by international funding.
Yeah, if you look at some of the people in the Trump circle, so this guy Shulman, according to John Simpson's piece, this is not John Simpson of the BBC, by the way, this is John Simpson of the Observer. Laura Loomer is another one. Well, she's now this kind of, Trump whisperer inside the MAGA crowd.
Geert Wilders in the Netherlands was another one.
Paid his legal fees.
Yeah. The Middle East Forum, again, largely focused on Israel, paid for Tommy Robinson's stage outside the Old Bailey. So what is it that's making a fundamentally pro-Israel movement fund Tommy Robinson's stage outside the Old Bailey?
Yeah, and then you can also, some of the other...
So it's fascinating. So now you've got a connection. Now you had people flying Israeli flags. Where do they suddenly get them from? You've got the funders behind Tommy Robinson, a far-right thug, and that's literally the case. He's been put in prison for such. Platforming these far-right speakers who are talking about Christo-fascism, almost. There is definitely a religious element to that, which doesn't sit very well with us as a nation in the UK. We're not particularly religious. But like I said the other day, there's a pushback against Islam qua immigration through this lens of let's get back in touch with our Christian heritage, or something as a reaction against these outside religious ideas coming in. We're feeling that they're encroaching on us and so on and so forth. And I think that's exactly what's people like Tommy Robinson is able to key into here with funding from far-right religious donors that have a keen interest in Israel prevailing in the Middle East.
There was a lot of sort of football-style chanting going on the march, a lot of it about Keir Starmer, but also quite a lot of it about Israel-Palestine.
Can I ask you about the football stuff? So I had a friend who was watching this, and he said basically it reminded him of 1980s football matches, and that it felt like it was fun for a lot of people. People were having a great day out. A lot of them were drunk. A lot of them were shouting stuff that they felt they're not allowed to shout in the football stands anymore, and they were having fun. shouting this stuff. It seemed, the way he described it, it almost sounded like a pride march, not in this case a gay pride march, but a kind of pride march for guys, many of them probably not from very diverse mixed communities, many of them actually paradoxically from quite white communities coming in to demonstrate against multicultural. Did it have a feeling for you of a sort of 1980s football match?
Oh, yeah, I think if you saw the stuff with the police, it was absolutely classic. You're trying to get to the other side, your opponents. This is the anti-fascist demonstration that was in Whitehall, and the police are stopping you. And therefore the police become your enemy and you have a fight with the police.
And the other side traditionally was the other football team supporters.
Correct, yeah. And the police's job is to try and keep you apart. And that still goes on. I also think the other thing, a lot of the old style football hooligans say that football has become much more sanitized. You can't get into a ruck as easy as you used to be able to. And the other thing which feeds into this sense of inequality in the world. We mentioned Clive Lewis last week, the Labour MP.
So, and they go off, it's fascinating where they go off to, and they mentioned that tweet from Clive Lewis that I discussed with you. But anyway, so there's that element going on. And then you have Elon Musk, who then gets involved, saying some really pretty horrendous things concerning, wanting violence or saying that British people are going to have to fight with violence and they're going to have to overthrow the UK government, and it's been seen really pretty controversially. So we're going to talk about that in a second. I just want to go remind people of who was running this rally. Christopher Yaxley Lennon, or as he's known, Tommy Robinson. He's a convict, assaulted police in 2005, assault at a neo-Nazi rally in 2011, football hooliganism in 2011, using a false passport in 2013, mortgage fraud in 2014, contempt of court in 2019, stalking a woman in 2021, libel in 2024. So when someone like Joey Manorino, this right-wing MAGA type in the US, says Tommy Robinson deserves a knighthood, the rally today in London was just awe-inspiring, with the man leading the charge along with the 3 million patriots, because Tommy Robinson claimed there are 3 million people. 110,000 is far more likely the case. And in fact, I've seen some population, a crowd analyst who actually does numbers of crowds as a job, saying no, definitely like 110,000, not 3 million. But anyway, Tommy Robinson claims 3 million joined his march fighting alongside him. The United Kingdom can be taken back from the tyrants who have taken it over, says Joey Manorino. And someone says, look, this is a guy you think deserves a knighthood. This is what he's been done for and convicted for. Now, just a very quick thing on immigration, and I've said this before, stuff like this is well worth looking at, which is the actual data. What happened? Why is immigration gone through the roof? Well, it's actually legal immigration and it's non-EU legal immigration, pretty much as a direct result of Brexit. Regulations were changed. We stopped taking immigrants in from Eastern Europe, from Europe as a whole. And then we replaced that with taking people in from non-European countries, particularly, brown-skinned people from Asia and Africa. And that I mention that because that is what's driving some of this angst with regard to immigration. No longer are you getting sort of white Eastern Europeans, you're getting black and brown people bringing different religions in, as people would see it, and that is causing the social discomfort among many who you would have seen at that march. But actually that's as a result of changing legislation under the Conservative government, and the Labour government at the moment are trying to turn that around, and that's happening. It is going in the right direction if you want to see immigration curtailed. This was a huge peak from the early 2020s as a result of that change in legislation, where people were taking huge numbers of people taking student visas and then turning them into work visas and bring their families over, and so on and so forth. So just be careful. The boat people issue is relatively small, 4.8% they reckon as a percentage of immigration. So legal immigration is far more of an issue. And actually the boat issue was also in that same period too. As the chart shows, the rapid growth happened in late 2020 to 2021 after we formally left the EU. You can debate whether this was caused by Brexit or just happened at the same time by chance, but facts are facts. So again, small boat issue might well be a Brexit thing, because we then weren't working with France and our European neighbours to stop the people crossing the channel. And then I think there were arrangements with sending people back and whatnot. And of course, when we came out of the EU, that stopped happening. Anyway, what you have from a British political point of view, as Phil Jemison really well points out here, is you've got the people on that march with basically Tommy Robinson with the Advance UK, which is this kind of movement, sort of Britain First movement, that is separate from people who are involved with reform, although there's going to be a big crossover. Now, Phil Jemison on my comment thread said one aspect that hasn't been picked up is the splintering of the far right. We now seem to have two groups: the Robinson Musk group, maybe with Ben Habib, his Advance UK party. So he was a former reform guy. They're using street protest as its tool. Then reform with Farage using traditional party politics, including glitzy MAGA style conventions. And he seems to be attracting a lot of disaffected Tories. So now Farage has disowned Robinson in the past due to Robinson's dubious views and history. Plus Musk has shunned Farage as he doesn't think he's up to the job. It seems to me that Farage is trying to usurp the Tories as a party of the UK right and to push it more to the right of when the Tories were led by Thatcher. He seems to want to harness a US MAGA, but without the white Christian nationalist slant, while Robinson and Musk are going for the full white Christian nationalist angle, as you saw there. It was interesting to see the Israeli flags in the crowd, as there's clearly an intersection between hardline Zionists and Robinsonistas, though the anti-Muslim angle, and there is a union between white Christian nationalists and Zionism in the US due to batshit biblical end times teachings. The crowd would probably have also included various British fascist groups, Homeland, Britain First, PA, who are rabidly anti-Semitic, and so they were probably disgusted at the sight of the Israeli flag. So you got a whole melange of people. A bit of a ramble, but the far right isn't a cohesive group. There's a really good point there. Anyway, going back to what Elon Musk said, I just want to show you this video on Elon Musk that I have previously seen, but I think it's well worth showing. And I was just reminded of that here. Because we're going to be talking about Elon Musk now. And this is Elon Musk's grandfather, talking about his grandfather, Technocracy Inc., and the connections to David Sachs and Peter Thiel. So just a quick video here that I think is pretty insightful.
Elon Musk's grandfather was Joshua Haldeman, who was a bigwig in something called Technocracy Inc., which got shut down. He wanted to create a society in which there were no politicians, there were no elections, there were appointed technocrats and bureaucrats, and he was a big...
This is techno or tech fascism and tech authoritarianism as espoused by people like Yarvin and Peter Thiel, Curtis Yarvin, Peter Thiel, David Sachs. And these are your South African tech oligarchs who are now getting involved in UK politics, as we are seeing with what Elon Musk said live at that on the big screen at that rally. Here's a little bit of background.
Supporter, it seems, of Hitler. The Technocracy Inc. produced a map, what they call a technate, and it went from the north of South America, including Venezuela, which Trump is very focused on, Panama, Mexico, United States, Canada, and Greenland.
Do you start seeing the connection now? Panama? We had all those issues over Panama. Venezuela, he's starting on Venezuela now, 2 boats being blown up. Venezuelans are thinking they're trying to goad, the US is trying to goad Venezuela into a war, and then Maduro gets offed, and then Venezuela's in the US sphere. You've got Greenland making moves towards having Greenland, and Canada being the 51st state of America. That's what the map looks like. That's the Technocracy Inc. map. The technate.
From the north of South America, including Venezuela, which Trump is very focused on, Panama, Mexico, United States, Canada, and Greenland, which is kind of extraordinary when you see what's happening with current events. When Technocracy Inc. was shut down in Canada, he went to South Africa, and he's a big supporter of apartheid. Elon Musk, born in South Africa. David Sachs, the AI czar of Trump, born in South Africa. Peter Thiel, massive connections to South Africa and to what is now Namibia. Another guy called Botha was related to Pik Botha, the last foreign minister of the apartheid regime. And then they all come together in America, together.
That all looks rather scary to me. Ione Escola says, why is Elon Musk pushing for civil war in the US and Europe? This thread breaks down how Musk is using his platform, wealth and influence to amplify far-right movements, incite political violence and undermine democracy across continents. Elon Musk is pushing for a civil war in the West. He's not just amplifying far-right voices, he's actively inciting political violence, and he's doing it with the power of X. His wealth and global influence is not just reckless, he's out of control and dangerous. So, you know, Elon Musk saying the left is a party of murder and all that kind of stuff. Elon Musk openly supports far-right movements, including the most unhinged ones. He praises nationalist leaders and criminals, boosts far-right parties in Europe, and appears alongside extremists like Tommy Robinson. By the way, on that video with Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart, they talk about a test that's just been done in Germany, where they have 5 people having a new Twitter account, new X account, who watch left-wing videos and 5 who watch right-wing videos, right? And then they just watch, I think, a single video and then let the algorithm go. And then it ends up that 75% of all the content these guys are given are like loads of AFD stuff. So AFD is being algorithmically promoted by Elon Musk. And this, I've probably skewed up the details of it, but you get the point. We've seen this a number of times where you have new accounts and you just see what you're fed, and it's 2-to-1 Republican versus Democrat. So you're getting fed the right wing by Twitter. We already knew that. It is part of the algorithm. But actually in Germany, it seems, or therefore internationally, the algorithm actually favors explicitly AFD. And you're wondering why AFD are now leading massively in the polls in Germany. So Musk openly supports far-right movements, including the most unhinged ones. He praises nationalist leaders and criminals, boosts far-right parties in Europe, and appears alongside extremists like Tommy Robinson. His rhetoric is increasingly militant and conspiratorial. After Charlie Kirk's assassination, Musk didn't call for calm. He amplified claims of left-wing violence before knowing the motive and pushed the idea that civil war is inevitable. He's pouring fuel on the fire again. Musk claims to be a free speech warrior, but he silences critics, bans journalists, and complies with authoritarian regimes. Free speech only applies to those who agree with him. He's the biggest and most dangerous hypocrite out there. He controls X, a platform with massive political influence. Election monitoring teams were dismantled. Far-right propaganda spreads unchecked via bots and foreign influence. Musk is enabling election interference by design. Musk's actions aren't random. Chaos benefits the far right. In the US, violence justifies authoritarian crackdowns. In Europe, fear boosts far-right parties. Musk wants them to win everywhere. Why? Because democracy threatens his influence. He and allies like Peter Thiel envision a techno-authoritarian state where billionaires control policy, contracts and society itself. Musk wants power, not accountability. He fantasizes about civil war but won't fight himself. He even ducked a cage match with Zuckerberg. He wants others to fight and die while he profits and posts. This is cowardice dressed as ideology. Musk's influence is global. His platform shapes political discourse in dozens of countries. His wealth gives him access to leaders. His actions have consequences far beyond the US. Elon Musk is not just controversial, he's dangerous and out of control, and he's using his platform, money and voice to push for political violence, authoritarianism and even coups. He must be called out clearly, loudly, relentlessly. Ed Davies said it should be simple. So he's a leader of the Liberal Democrats in the UK, and he was against what Elon Musk said, as we're just about to see. It should be simple. People who cheer on violence in the UK can't enrich themselves with British taxpayers' money. This means that Elon Musk should no government contracts for you, no energy supply license for you. You can't go and spread that kind of political discord and advocate for violence in the UK and just think that that's fine. This is BBC's Newsnight.
Discuss with you, which is around Elon Musk, because Number 10 has condemned the ex-owner for using dangerous and inflammatory language after Elon Musk addressed a rally organised by the far-right activist Tommy Robinson in London this weekend. He urged the crowd of protesters to fight and called for the dissolution of Parliament. Have a listen.
Whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you.
Violence.
You either fight back or you die. I really think there's got to be a change of government in Britain. And you can't, we don't have another 4 years or whatever the next election is. It's too long. Something's got to be done. There's got to be a dissolution of Parliament and a new vote.
Well, Elon
and that's
Musk's
just a
soup
soupçon of what he said. Like, he said loads of stuff, as I showed you in the video the other day, that was absolutely, I think, horrific from a person with his kind of responsibilities.
That rare thing united British politicians from different parties in condemnation, with the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood tonight calling his language abhorrent. But only one MP trolled Musk with a meme involving SpongeBob SquarePants. That was the Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey, who I spoke to earlier. I asked him what he wants to change when it comes to the ex-owner now.
Well, I always think with these sorts of people like Elon Musk, it's follow the money. And I would urge the government ahead of the potential tech deal they do with President Trump during his state visit.
There you go. And that is, we're circling back to where we started.
That they say any deal will come before Parliament. They'll guarantee there'll be no watering down of the Online Safety Act, as Musk would like, and the digital services tax won't be cut for tech billionaires. I'd like to go further, actually. I'd like government contracts with Tesla to be cut and ended.
What contracts do we have with Tesla? What would this mean? This is, as you say, the second most rich man in the world. How much difference would this make?
Well, the contracts from Tesla aren't huge, but he's applied, for example, for a license. He's applied to Ofgem for a license to sell and distribute energy in this country, presumably linked to his Tesla cars. So they're the sorts of things we should look at.
So there's potential there, but the government has a procurement process, doesn't it? So the government, when they procure who is going to, run a particular contract, it is about the quality of the product, it's about the price. And if you start to unravel that based on political beliefs, then doesn't that end up not providing the best value for money for the taxpayer, which is the very point of these processes?
There's another test that often is in procurement, which is this individual, is this company fit and proper? That's a very old age test, and I think it's a relevant one. And when someone is calling for the overthrow of a democratically elected government, whether you like them or not, and they're a person from another country who's saying these things, I think we should take that seriously. I don't think Elon Musk is a fit and proper person for us to do business with.
And I completely agree. And we're just going to go later to when the panel comes in to just hear them talk about tech.
This is always a message.
Ed Davey, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, let's pick up on those Elon Musk comments that Sir Ed Davey has been such a critic of. I'm joined by Imran Ahmed, the CEO of the Centre for Countering Digital Hate. Welcome to Newsnight, Imran. What is your take first on what Elon Musk said this weekend?
Well, it was mildly incoherent, but it appeared that Elon Musk, a foreign centre-billionaire, was calling for violence on the streets of Great Britain and being cheered on and encouraged and enabled by a man who claims to want to make Britain great again. What on earth would make Britain great again by seeing more political violence on our streets? Something that didn't used to affect our country but has in recent years. And I can't think of anything more un-British or unwelcome in the UK right now.
I was quite struck this morning when I was listening to the Today programme there that Jonathan Hall, who's the UK independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, he said Musk's comments wouldn't have broken the law. He said politicians use martial language all the time, don't they? I mean, metaphors such as fights and struggles are pretty normal. And he was talking about it contingently, wasn't he? He wasn't saying go out immediately. What's your reaction to that? He wasn't breaking the law. It wasn't incitement.
I mean, perhaps he's right and it wouldn't have broken the law. I'd like to see it tested in court, which is precisely where these things should be tested. But let me read for you his own platform's rules on inciting violence. The platform states that it does not allow content that incites, promotes or encourages others to commit acts of violence or harm, threats to inflict physical harm on others, and says that it will remove or reduce the visibility of violent content to ensure the safety of our users and prevent the normalization or glorification of violent actions. So that's his platform's own rules that are poorly enforced, to be frank. But nevertheless, he's out there calling for violence on British streets. I do think this is a man that isn't fully in control of what he's saying. And sometimes when you're trying to sort of, asking like, what do you think about what Elon Musk says? You're thinking, crumbs, I don't think I know. I'm not sure he does either.
Are we overstating the influence of him then?
I think Elon Musk, his influence comes not necessarily just from his voice, but his ability to control the algorithm on a platform that, like it or not, is used by journalists, politicians, and many others, and is the site of quite a lot of crucial democratic discourse. Now, I think it's worrying that it's the site of so much discourse, and that the algorithms that shape what wins and what loses on that site, because there's a couple of 100 million people that post there. It's one of the smaller sites, but nevertheless, the algorithm decides who gets visibility and who gets suppressed, essentially. And he now has his thumb on the scales. But he also uses that platform to promote lies, as he did last summer. Last summer, when 3 girls were killed in Southport, he came out and blamed it on an asylum seeker. That led directly to the riots that happened in Britain. And I think in that instance, what you've got is someone spreading disinformation that leads directly to the worst race riots in my lifetime, in my country. And I think that that's shameful and disgusting. And Ed Davey was
100%. Like, he literally fomented riots.
Right in part. We shouldn't do business with him.
Gillian, I'd like to bring you in on that, actually, of course, because you are from not a million miles away
former
from
Conservative
Southport.
Education Minister.
What's your view on that? And I know as Education Secretary you did a lot of soul searching about the impact of social media on children.
Yeah.
How worried are you about his influence?
It worries every parent, and I don't know what's gone wrong with Elon Musk. He's a brilliant business guy, but his foray into politics is absolutely disastrous. It's disastrous for him. It's disastrous for his country. His companies. You can't buy power in this country. You have to get elected, right? So it's not like the US system. It is a different system, and he's trying to
but you can buy
interfere in our politics in a way which is very dangerous. And I think the British public largely will see it for what it is. If he wants to help the British people, he could reduce the price of Teslas, reduce the price of Starlink, and probably, be more moderate on his own platform. And as Imran said, it actually, be a role model that actually enforces his own
algorithm.
rules.
Change the algorithm so I don't get Nazis in my feed.
To be fair to Gillian's government...
So, yeah, absolutely spot on. And when you've got someone like Andrew Neil, who's died in a wall...
Well, I think not for the first time.
Died in a wall Conservative, not happy with this, then, things are going wrong.
Phillips got it right. This was not, everybody on that march was not on the far right, but there were people on the far right who were on the march, and some of them resulted in entirely unnecessary violence. And I hope, like all violence in any political demonstration from whatever part of the political spectrum, the courts will take a very stern line on that. Free speech is precious, but free speech depends on the ability to express our views without fear of violence. And to put the police in the line on that as well is just unacceptable. So I think a lot of the march involved people who are just deeply worried and unhappy about the direction of the country. And I think rather than condemn that, we should understand that. There is a broad feeling across the political spectrum that the political class, the political elite, are letting us down. Having said that, I think that a British politics in which seminal roles are being played by Tommy Robinson, Elon Musk, Steve Bannon, I'm afraid that sends a shiver down my spine. That is not the British way and is not the way to go. And that's a direction which fills me with fear if we go further down that road.
1,000%. Here's Ed Davey again.
Civil war is inevitable in the UK. He's called for the overthrow of an elected British government. This is scandalous, and I think the government needs to be harder on him. And when these things arise, I always say follow the money. And I think what Elon Musk is most about is his own commercial interests, whether it's in social media or
I think it's power.
Tesla.
Underwritten by money, but power.
Hit him where it hurts.
Yep.
So whether it's regulation,
yes.
The Online Safety Act, there
yes.
are improvements being made on it, but regulating social media companies who are doing harm, and the digital service tax, that shouldn't be cut. And I hope that in any deal they do with President Trump during state visit, they're tough on American tech firms.
And I'm pretty sure that they won't be. Now, Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Conservatives, even though you've had Andrew Neil be very, very forthright there about Elon Musk's presence and what he was saying, you've got Kemi Badenoch, who's been in trouble for not being so harsh.
You look at the comments that he made, and it's very easy to read it in multiple contexts. What I don't want to be doing is condemning this person, condemning that person. We've been doing that for many years.
He was inciting violence,
well, I don't actually think that he was. I think he was saying, if people are being violent, fight back.
Fight back or die.
Well, it's not the sort of language that I would use. But what I'm trying to do right now is de-escalate. Even asking me to say, well, will you condemn Elon Musk? That's not a de-escalation. All of this.
Well, I think it is actually. I think people out there listening will think, well, that's exactly what a responsible leader of the opposition should do.
I disagree, Ian, because a lot of people would have interpreted his remarks very differently. What I need to do is set out.
Then you're pandering to them.
No, I'm not pandering to them. What I'm not going to do is set my stall based on what did Tommy Robinson say. Do you agree? What did Elon Musk say? Do you agree? I'm not a commentator.
Well,
I'm a politician.
Sure.
No, Ian, I'm pushing back on this.
Okay,
it is a trap, and
I'm not seeking to trap you. But you're not even willing to call Tommy Robinson far right.
No, I'm just not engaging in that, because you know what happened last year? The Prime Minister went out and called a group of parents and many legitimate protesters far right. It didn't calm things down. What it did was escalate, and we saw riots in Southport. We just need to stop.
Okay.
I'm with Ian Dale there. I think that's really weak. Like, if you can't call Tommy Robinson far right, then you got problems.
Elon Musk, very close associate in the...
So this is Ed Miliband with Andrew Marr here. Andrew Marr speaking. Ed Miliband is a Labour politician. I think he's the Environment Secretary.
Last of Donald Trump, the world's richest man, said to the crowd...
Used to run the Labour Party.
...in terms that they should turn to violence, and in terms suggested it was time to overthrow the elected British government. What's your reaction?
Who the hell is this guy, is my reaction. Just because...
Yes. So Ed Davey from the Lib Dems, spot on, right? Ed Miliband from Labour, spot on. Kemi Badenoch from the Tories, I don't want to be calling Tommy Robinson far right because I don't want to escalate. No, call a spade a spade. And mate, you're pretty spadey.
The elected British government. What's your reaction?
Who the hell is this guy, is my reaction. Just because you're a billionaire, it doesn't give you a right to come and tell us how to run our country. And
freaking right, mate.
As far as I can see, this guy is a publicity-seeking narcissist who is inciting violence on our streets. And honestly, he should go back to running his car company, and I think, as the Americans would say, butt out of our politics.
Elon.
Honestly, spot on. Ed Davey then responded to Kemi Badenoch and said, I'm old enough to remember when the Conservative Party leaders believed in law and order. So Zoe Grunewald said, Kemi Badenoch refusing to acknowledge that Tommy Robinson is far right, now on LBC, and refusing to condemn Elon Musk's words. In fact, she says that Musk has said what Musk said isn't incitement. So what would it be incitement then? How violent would his words have to be before he was deemed a threat to the country? Spot on. Then we have the former Deputy Prime Minister and former leader of the Lib Dems again, Sir Nick Clegg, and he should know what he's talking about in terms of tech, because he's just finished working for Facebook as one of the head honchos, and I think he came out of that because Facebook have taken a rather dodgy turn.
Nationalists, certainly in the United States, operate very transnationally. They interfere in other people's elections. They interfered in the German elections. Musk, supported the AfD. Vance met the AfD leader before he met Merz, the then Chancellor. They interfered in the Polish election. And they're now inserting themselves into British politics. And if you look at the way in which Tommy Robinson sort of fawned on Musk, look at the way in which Farage fawns about Trump, they're seeking to turn this country into sort of little MAGA Britain. And I think we need to be just much clearer in calling out that this is, in whatever shape or form, a form of extraterritorial interference into our democratic culture, which they would never countenance, which they would never tolerate in the United States. And of course, the government has to be somewhat tongue-tied because they've got to respect the normal sort of diplomatic niceties. But I do hope that privately, if not publicly, might be better if it was done a little publicly at times, the Prime Minister says very, very, categorically to the United States, to Donald Trump, that this interference in our democratic debate might be welcomed by Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage, but is not welcomed by the vast majority of the British people.
But Trump himself is highly unlikely to either try to stop Musk, or even if he did try, it's very unclear that it would have any effect. So, and there are plenty of British people who apparently applaud what Musk says. So what do we do about it?
Well, you don't win an argument without engaging in it, is certainly my experience. I'm no longer in public life, but if you let people sort of establish facts on the ground by default in politics, you're only to blame if you don't engage with that. And I think what we are seeing, in my view, is the sort of Trumpification of European politics. It's not just here. It is very plausible to imagine in a relatively short period of time that Le Pen will be president of France, if not her sidekick, that Wilders might win in the election in Holland next week. The AfD just tripled its vote in the North Rhine-Westphalia state election yesterday in Germany, and that Nigel Farage may be prime minister of this country, or at least very close to it. And clearly, in ways that I'm sure you've analysed on this programme multiple times, the old cleavages of politics, of left and right, and the red team and the blue team, are breaking down into something way more complex. But I do think when the most powerful country in the world asserts itself or inserts itself into our democratic debate and imposes itself in that way, yes, we are a lot smaller, we're not as powerful, we're not as rich, but we have every right to speak up and say, this is not something which we want in our democratic culture in the United Kingdom.
Spot on. All of this is spot on. And the final one is this.
This is the most ultimate
James
provocation,
O'Brien.
to tell people that if they don't fight, then they will be victims. Violence is coming to... Well, have a listen yourself.
Violence is going to come to you. You will have no choice. You're in a fundamental situation here where whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. You either fight back or you die.
Literally saying that to Tommy Robinson and his fans behind him. The far right.
The truth.
If this speech had been made 10 years ago, what would our reaction be? There wouldn't have been 110,000 people out in London. And I think we would have had the confidence and the courage to say, hey, foreign billionaire, get out of our heads. Stop telling our neighbours that they should be attacking us, if that's what he's doing. What do you think he is talking about when he says violence is coming to you? You either fight back or you die. And Keir Starmer, I don't think, has acknowledged this speech in any way, shape or form.
Not personally, but obviously Ed Miliband and others have, but it would be interesting to see whether there is something more formal from the government. I'm not sure there has been, but it's been some days since that took place. I'm going to leave you with this. So this is just a little bit of a reflection of how we are being MAGAfied, Trumpified in the UK. So this is a story coming from Wales, where a councillor, a local Tolfan council member, has gone a bit bonkers and got pretty angry. I've just walked out of Tolfan Council's full council meeting in absolute disbelief, says Councillor David Thomas, in this kind of random borough council in Wales, right? Not a single mention, not even a moment's acknowledgement of the horrific event involving Charlie Kirk. For a council that claims to stand for community, compassion and respect, their silence today was nothing short of shameful. Absolutely disgusting. Tolfan Council, why would you have a minute's silence or some kind of respectful monologue about Charlie Kirk? Bet you 99% of the people in there wouldn't have known who Charlie Kirk was before last week. But this is a Reform UK councillor who probably lives terminally online and lives in these information spaces and is completely taken in by everything that's happened with Charlie Kirk, and is going to a local council meeting and going, nuts that they haven't had some kind of mark of respect for Charlie Kirk when Gladys and Doris and Bernard and Ifan haven't got a clue who Charlie Kirk is. Like 70-year-old councillors. Like, I don't live on Twitter, mate. Now, I know it's a big thing, someone being murdered in public, assassinated. Yeah, but come on, this is a council meeting in Wales, dude. But I think it's representative of this importing of American politics and that, a Trumpification of the UK. I think Nick Clegg was absolutely right when he said little MAGA Britain. And add that to a kind of a much darker tech authoritarianism, and then a lack of regulation on these firms that perpetuates this cycle of gathering more and more power and momentum. We have dangerous times ahead for us, across the pond in the US, yeah, for sure. But in Europe and in the UK, we are having our electoral systems interfered with. The narratives are being driven by people who are determining algorithms to the benefit of forces that are the most dangerous for democracy. And it is freaking scary. I am with Andrew Neil, and I never thought I'd say that because I disagree with most everything Andrew Neil says. But I fear for the future if this is where we're headed. Thank you.